What is going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Game Informer Show, a weekly podcast covering the video game industry. Join us every Thursday for a discussion about the latest gaming news, reviews, and exclusive reveals alongside Game Informer staff and special guests from around the industry. I'm one of your hosts today, Alex Van Aken, and today we are joined by a special guest. You will see them later on in the show. Charlie Wacholz, freelance writer in the games industry, journalist. You might know his work from CNN, Game Informer now, plenty of places. He will be joining us later to talk about his Animal Well review that he wrote for Game Informer magazine. But first, I'm joined by Wesley LeBlanc. How you doing, Wes?
I'm doing good. Not really. Today kind of sucks to be a fan of video games, but I personally am doing okay. You know, I'm breathing. Had a good lunch.
Good.
Yeah, I'm alive.
I was kind of keeping track. I don't want to blow up your spot or anything, but I know you all at Household LeBlanc were building like a new bookshelf.
Yeah,
is that what's behind you? It looks nice.
Yeah, I don't even want to take credit because my wife Gabby is very savvy and good with tools and hands-on and always has been. I went to Seoul, South Korea for a work trip. And I was gone for 5 days, and she just asked for the green light, and I was like, "Yeah, sure, go for it." And then I came home, and I have a bookcase, like
it makes you look just very cool
in my office.
Yeah,
like she built it like floor to ceiling. She put crown molding at the top. She's wild. It was very impressive, and it looks awesome. But yeah, it's crazy.
Nice. I'm gonna be analyzing your board games behind you the rest of the show, and video viewers can also do that. We are also rounded out for this segment by Marcus Stewart. How you doing, Marcus?
Hi, I'm going to spend my intro asking, we're going to go back to Wesley because I just want to say, Wes, that the fact that your wife is like a handy person, you are living the dream, because in the past week, I've had an epiphany about myself where I realized that as long as I am single, I don't think I can, nor do I necessarily want to ever own a home because I am not a handy person at all. And I think I've always known this, but I feel like, and I've never really had any aspirations to own a home, honestly. Maybe it's just growing up in apartments as a kid. But I feel like there's this expectation that at a certain point you should aspire to own a home. And I've just never had that in me. And I've finally allowed myself to be okay with that. Because it's like owning a home is hard. Like there's a lot of maintenance that you have to do on your own.
Mowing the lawn, like, at least in Florida here, we have to do it like sometimes twice a week. It sucks. It's there's a lot of great reasons to not own a home because there's a lot of reasons, but it is nice having someone as handy as Gabby because I'm down to like try and get things done, but I'm very much like watching a YouTube video, scrubbing through, like doing it step by step, and she's just like has done it before because her mom is the same way and she grew up that way. So like while I'm finding the YouTube video, she's already like halfway through the project.
Yeah, see, I need that. I was also watching a clip of Jeanette McCurdy talking about how she used to own a home, and then after 3 years she sold it because she had the same realization where she like, the 3 years that I owned a home alone, it like sucked because things kept breaking and I had to spend a bunch of money to keep fixing things. And she's like, I am infinitely happier living like renting, basically. Like I'd rather just rent an apartment, and then if something breaks, I just call a person and they come fix it. And I'm like, you know what? I think I'm that kind of person, because like unless I'm like obscenely rich, that's the only way I'll ever own a home, because anytime something breaks, I'm just going to throw money at the problem. Like, I don't want to fix this. I can't fix this. I'll just pay someone probably too much money to fix it.
Yeah. That is the worst part. When something breaks, there's no one to call. You just either fix it or you pay a professional who will probably overcharge you, or like move it. I don't know. Like if an AC breaks, I don't even know how much that costs. I don't want to know, but that's probably 10 grand. And if you're renting, it's just call the landlord and sorry, dude, fix this.
Yeah. Or the minute a shingle falls off the roof, I'm just like, damn it, what do I do here? Like,
in Florida, like our roofs are fine. There's nothing going on in Florida that damages roofs or houses.
Definitely no yearly seasons that could endanger your roof. No,
not at all. No, I don't think about those.
Yeah. So that's my any future wifeys out there. You know, if you're interested, I'm sure this was a compelling pitch for you. He doesn't want to own a home or fix things. But if you like doing those things, Perfect
match.
Appealing. Yeah, it's a lot of brownie points for that.
Would you compromise and try to buy your own home, Marcus? If
buy my own. Wait, buy my own home?
You don't want to own a home.
Well, would you buy a home if you found a wife who was like handy?
I could be talked into it, yes. If that's what you mean. If someone was like, I can, if my wife was Wes's wife, which sounds like a weird sentence.
Okay,
of like
that level of skill.
Willing, like I will hold up my end of the bargain in other ways that I can. But if they're like, hey, I love fixing stuff, let's do a house. I'm like, okay, because otherwise my limit is like a condo, maybe. You know?
Okay, like
that in between.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think I'm a condo guy too. I don't know. I like having we have a patio now, and that's real nice. Not that you can't have that with a condo. We're in a townhouse, so it's like
condos and townhouses are the same thing, right?
Yeah, I think so, right?
I was literally thinking about this on a walk this weekend because I walked through a nice condo neighborhood, and I was like, this is probably a stupid thought, but those are the same thing, just with different names, right? Like there's no distinction between the two.
My understanding was a condo is an apartment that is owned by a private individual. So a group of condos are set up like an apartment building, but they are not managed by a corporation. There might be like on-site people that you are.
It's like some retired rich couple somewhere that.
Yeah, you're basically spot. I looked it up, and the way it's describing townhomes versus condos, like condos seldom have garages. Townhouses you usually enter from inside of a building, kind of like an apartment. Yeah. For some reason, my mind says condo equals beach. I've never heard someone have a townhome on a beach, but they're always like, I have a condo on a beach. Yeah,
I think that's
true.
just the Floridian.
Yeah.
There are 0 beaches up in
downtown condos.
Right?
That's like more. There's like downtown condos in Minneapolis, like lakeside condos, that kind of thing. But yeah, I think it's just like an apartment building setup that is owned by individuals. Anyways, this is a video game podcast. Let's talk about video games.
Now you know the difference, everybody.
Now you know that
we've all been wondering it.
We have. We are going to get into a lot of bummer news today in regards to the Xbox Game Studio closures that were announced with Arkane Austin, Tango, and a few others, as well as Switch 2 news. We're going to spend too much time on that. There isn't a ton of substance there, but it is something we want to keep you up to date on. Animal Well, Crow Country, Little Kitty Big City with my past. We're going to be talking about all of those games. But first, we're going to dive into our Hades 2 cover story, which is, if you're listening to this, not yet available for you. But we do want to announce that it is a thing. Marcus, do we want to dive into our full thoughts today? Do we want to wait for the actual cover story to roll out next week? What are you thinking? I know I'm kind of asking this on the fly.
I mean, we've already revealed it, so we can get into it, get a preview.
People can play the game. Yeah,
it's already out there. All
right, let's do it then. So Marcus and I have had access to the early access build for 2.5 weeks now, something like that. And we have been playing it extensively as part of our cover story trip to San Francisco. We visited Supergiant Games in downtown SF and met with a team, met a lot of the people who are responsible for making Bastion, Transistor, Pyre, Hades 1, and now Hades 2.
Yeah, we met five of the original 7.
Yeah.
That started the studio.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we're gonna have a lot of video features going up on. We interviewed, Gen Z, the art director, Darren Korb, the composer, Greg Casavan, Amir Rao, and Logan Cunningham. We got a lot of stuff coming. So youtube.com/Game Informer. That stuff will begin rolling out after our cover has launched proper, which will be next Tuesday digitally. And then it'll be shipped out to mailboxes in the weeks to follow. I've had a couple people ask if they, I think some people have said they haven't received their issue yet from the Star Wars. That, check your mailboxes. That has been hitting people. I've been getting a lot of tweets like every day. Like just got my Game Informer. So it is coming. If you signed up in that window, I promise you will get the Star Wars Outlaws cover. apologies if we're kind of at the mercy of USPS and the print shop that we work with. But if you purchased it, it is indeed coming. And we've also had a couple other questions about the magazine stuff. If your order says pending, that just means it is active. It will say pending until the end of your subscription, and then it will say complete. That is just the way that
yeah. Think of it as like all of your issues for that period are pending because they haven't come yet. Like all 10 issues that you subscribe to is what it's basically saying. I know it's weird wording, but it will say pending until you've gotten all 10 issues. Then it will say complete. That's how that works. I know we've just clearing up some FAQ stuff that I've seen on social media and stuff. But yeah, we flew out to Supergiant. We interviewed those folks. We've been playing the game, and it's really, really good. It's so good.
It's funny. Last week we talked about Hades 2 on the podcast, and it was like tiptoeing. We had access to the early access build at that point, and so we were just very much trying to not talk about anything that was not in the technical test.
I didn't envy you, Alex. I listened to last week's show, and I could tell you were like, there are points where you're just like having to stop yourself mentally, like, oh, I can't. I think I have to not say as much as I know I can say.
Fun thing to juggle, but we can everything we know for the most part. There's a couple things that we know that people don't know, but it's in the game. People have access to the game. It's massive. There are six areas to explore in the early access build. 6
areas between 2 routes. I mean, the early access build is already bigger than Hades 1.0. Yeah, like 1.0. Yeah.
Well, actually, just Hades, period.
I guess
that's such a wild statement to say. Like that's but I mean, we don't know how much of the early access is the final game, right?
I think Marcus and I might, but I don't know if we
know we do because we know how much is left. Like we know what they have left to make. We know what the final game is going to look like in terms of like a broad content sense. Like in terms of like we know how many worlds are left to make. We know what they have to like from a broad sense. In terms of what they fill that stuff with, we don't know. Yeah. But in terms of like the skeleton of the game, we do.
I think for me, like from the outside looking in, when I hear it's bigger than Hades already. Early access, for some reason to me, I'm like, oh, the game's like 40% done. But when in reality, they might be 80 or 90. Like, so I'm looking forward to seeing just how much bigger this game gets. But the fact that it's bigger than Hades 1 already is daunting as someone who has not beaten Hades 1 and intends to before Hades 2.
Man.
Yeah, and honestly, like just even that discussion kind of gets into what the focus of this cover story is, because we knew it would be coming out after the early access launch. So this story is, the angle of it is a little bit more the making of Hades 2, like it straight up says that on the cover, because it does get into the what it is of like, here's all the new features, here's what it does, because at the end of the day, Hades 1 by the end of its time released on multiple platforms, so there's still going to be like a wide audience of console players that are not going to be able to play Hades 2 until it comes to consoles, which it will at some point. We know that for sure. But so it was like, you do have to cater to that audience of like, no matter what, they're not going to be able to see this, or maybe they'll keep themselves from seeing this stuff because they don't want to be spoiled. So it gets into
Good
that.
luck. But my entire Twitter is just Hades 2, 2 and rap beef, which I mean, great time to be alive.
Yeah, see, if you combine mine, it's Hades 2, rap beef, and wrestling Twitter, which are all blending together slowly, which is an interesting Venn diagram.
Yeah, how long till Kendrick and Drake just settle it on the mat? That's the question.
Wes, if I could tell you how many wrestling memes have made their way into that discussion, like you'd be alarmed. So it's a matter of time. But yeah, so it like this story focuses on like the how and the why of Hades 2. Like, how did Supergiant decide to create its first sequel? Because famously they've been a one and done studio. But for Hades 2, they felt like for the first time they had some more that they wanted to say with it. And sort of like the process of like how they decide to tackle their next project in general, and even their stance towards sequels and what they think like constitutes a good sequel. The story gets into that. It gets into the mythology of Hades 2 because Malinoe, the the new protagonist, who is Zagreus' sister. She's a real mythological figure, much like Zagreus was, and same as Zagreus is like a figure that probably like 90% of people have no clue about. Like Supergiant was telling us, like, yeah, a lot of people thought that we made up Zagreus, but no, he's a real thing from mythology. Same with Malinoway, and getting to the sort of like fringe mythology or like the fringe side of Greek mythology that Malinoway hails from, and like the Orphic
hymns.
Like Orphic religion and the hymns and stuff like that, and getting into, because Malinoway's a witch, getting into more of the like witchcraft and occult side of Greek mythology that me personally I didn't know existed prior to talking to the creative director Greg Kasavin about it, who's kind of the principal writer and storyteller. Like, he's talking about all the research that he did, and discovering Malinoway for the first time too, and just seeing the sort of storytelling possibility there. And so like there's even like there's a sidebar in the story dedicated to like, hey, this is who Malinoway is, just like from a mythological standpoint, and here's what Supergiant is bringing to this character, and why she's different than Zagreus. We get into like even like the sound design, because we had a long discussion with Darren Korb that you'll see in full in a video that Alex is putting together, but sort of like designing the unique soundscape of Hades 2, because again, it is a lot more like spooky and like occult. So how does that change the sound compared to like the more sort of like heavy metal rock edge that Hades had?
That was one of my favorite parts of reading your cover story, which is, in my opinion, one of your best. Like, it's such a good story, and I after I read it the first time, I was like, dang, Marcus really crushed this, especially with the unique premise of it being like more of a making of. But yeah, him saying like, if the first game is like heavy rock and almost like metal, and this one's like a lot of synthesizer focus and stuff, can't wait to hear that, because I haven't beaten Hades 1, but I listen to Hades music often, and I'm very excited for Hades 2.
Yeah. I saw Iron 8-Bit is selling the original Hades vinyl, like the 4-part vinyl. Ooh. And I unfortunately do not have the money to buy it, but I was like really tempted. I've hovered over that button
so many times.
Wait, you both own record players?
No, I don't.
Oh, okay. So yours is functional.
I do have a record collection. I have a record collection because I will one day have a record player. I just really want to do it right and like do it big.
Yeah.
But I have like an active collection.
Wait, what does that mean? What does do it like? You want like a fancy record player, or what is that?
Yeah, with like really nice speakers. Like I really want it. Like
for some reason, I'm picturing like the big ones with the giant horn that you crank. Like you want one of those huge ones.
I want like the sound system style ones where it's like you are wiring the speakers, and like you like sit down in a space and listen. And I have wanted one for years, and I've had a record collection for years. So. Yeah,
there's a really cool company I'm blanking on, but I will send it to you one day, that makes packages like that based on how much you want to spend.
Oh, cool.
And it's really cool because when I first got into it, I started with like a record player that had the speakers built in. Yeah. And then you kind of quickly realize that's not really the route to go if you want to showcase like why vinyl's so nice. Mm-hmm. And I eventually got like some small satellite speakers with it, and it is like night and day. So I definitely would recommend pursuing your goal of like a real system with it.
Yeah.
Nice.
So
but yeah, sorry, back to the story.
No,
one of the other big things that the cover story gets into is the early access run that it's going to be on. We know it's going to be in early access for the remainder of the year. Mm-hmm. Outside of that, who knows? I believe Hades 1 was in early access for around 9-10 months. So, because I asked them, like, are we looking at a comparable amount of time? It wouldn't surprise me if it's shorter, just because of the
2 years apparently.
Okay, it was longer than that. Right. Because it was like it launched with the Epic Store pretty much. That was when the Epic Store was still new. It's on Steam now as opposed to coming later like it did with the first run. But sort of getting into the story gets into the approach that the team is taking this time, now that they're starting from experience instead of scratch, just their attitudes about early access in general, how daunting it is to kind of immediately do that again. Because that was one of the reasons I was most surprised that they were doing a sequel, not just like, oh my God, they're doing their first sequel, but like, watching the No Clip documentary series about the game. And, you know, seeing like just the stress that comes from like doing an early access run, especially for your first time. And they had one of the best early access runs ever, maybe the best in my opinion. But even then you could see like sometimes you're like, oh, this is weighing on them, like just having to, you know, adjust their timelines and their updates and stuff like that to fix things in a timely manner. So the idea of like, let's immediately do that again with our next game, not even take like a game in between. Let's just do it all over again. But just seeing their enthusiasm for doing it and just the lessons they learned from the first time that they're applying to this time, it's very like all of that is forming a sequel that like so far from based on what we're playing is very much on track to be as good if not better than Hades 1, which for me is high praise because Hades was my game of the year in 2020 when it went 1.0. Like I love Hades. I'm a big Supergiant fan in general.
It was my game of the year as well.
Yeah,
I remember it being like not a big stink, but we were like the staff was kind of split. It was like what, Last of Us Part 2 versus Hades 1, I think was the lineup.
Which I would say it was a big stink because it was like, because at least for me, because Last of Us was my number 2, so it's like I'm not gonna be heartbroken if it wins. It's my number 2 favorite game, so whatever. But I know we put up a fight, Alex. We tried. Yeah. We did. Yeah. I think we knew we were blowing against the wind on that, but we did our best.
Hades was the number 2, and Last of Us Part 1 was number 1.
Yeah.
Which hey, the second best game of the year, still better than everything else except for 1. That's, you know, gotta look at it like that, right? But yeah, I've loved my time with Hades 2. I love how like they didn't try to reinvent the wheel of like, let's just, they like, even Greg was saying how like finishing Hades 1 in our cover story, he's like, he didn't walk away from that feeling like they like missed the boat on anything or like, oh, we didn't do this right. It was more like, no, we nailed it, so let's just focus on adding to the things that we nailed.
Yeah, I was surprised. Normally I wouldn't say he was cocky by any means.
I mean, even he admittedly said, like, you know, pardon my arrogance, but
yeah, but it didn't come across that way. It just like, it was just like very matter of fact. Like, no, we did everything we wanted to do. Like, we didn't have like the regrets. The game that we made was the one we wanted to make, and early access kind of allowed us to do that. So why wouldn't we do it again?
Everybody loved it.
Yeah, so
if it ain't broke, you know, just add to it. Yeah, and they have with just like the new progression systems with like the Arkane cards, kind of a more in-depth version of the Mirror of Night from Hades 1. Where you're you know, you got all these tarot cards that you can, it's actually, I'm glad that Greg said this because I thought of it too. It's very much like managing functions in Transistor, if people remember that, where you have all these kind of like active abilities that you can have at once, like perks basically of like, oh, one card gives you health regen every time you exit a room, or this one buffs your magic based on like by 30, or you know, Death Defiance is one of the cards, which is, you know, you get to die once basically and you immediately come back to life without having to start over. Like those are all the different cards, but you can only have a set number based on, it's like dictated by this meter called Grasp of the Arcana.
But you can increase your meter.
You can with a currency called Psych that you find, but the cards have different costs. So like one card might fill 5 slots on the meter, and then one might fill 2. And usually the stronger cards fill up more. So it's like you can have as many or as little as you want, but it pretty much encourages you to build very specialized builds of Melina Way of like, I'm going to have cards that focus on her survivability. Like it's going to be very hard to kill me in this run.
There are zero cost cards that require some other predetermining factor to be met to activate, which is cool. It's like have 3 cards of the same power in your like activated, and then this 0 cost card will activate. And it's almost like a little puzzle sometimes. You're like, how can I get my bit, like I really want this extra ability for free, can I tweak my build to unlock that one? Like what am I willing to let go of? It's really fun.
Yeah, and I won't spend too much time because I know you guys talked about this last week, like kind of getting to the nuts and bolts of Hades 2. But I would say one of the other things that has impressed me, and again, going back to the philosophy of like, let's just build upon the things that really worked with the first game, is that it feels like there's a lot more emergent kind of like storytelling moments that happen. Because, you know, one of the cool things about the first Hades was just like, not only the reactive dialogue where it seems like everyone always has something to say about a very specific thing that you did, but also there's, you know, some of the cooler moments were just like, oh, Eurydice's door randomly appeared this time, so I can go talk to her and see what's up with her. But that doesn't happen all the time, you know?
Yeah.
Where it feels like there's a lot more of those kind of moments where you're out during runs and then a character will appear out of nowhere and like help you out or challenge you or just do something. Like it feels like people are always showing up, and it's like someone like, oh, this is a cool person, or this is someone that I liked from the first game that I was wondering where they were, and here they are, or stuff like that. It feels like there's a lot more of those surprise moments, which only adds to just the enjoyment of like going on a run, outside of just how fantastic the combat feels, but just like, you know, you never truly know what you're going to find when you go out there.
Yeah.
And then tack on out, you know, the second route that exists now. It's like, it's just such a great game. And it's weird because I was even thinking in my mind, like I was putting my early access hat on of like, okay, what are some things that could be better, you know, so far? And I've struggled so far to find something about like, oh, you know, this could use some work or anything like that. It's just like, no, I'm having fun with this, you know?
Yeah.
I think
they are on track to, I mean, Hades 1, I think, I don't know what we scored it, but I could have seen it, like, just my personal opinion.
I think we famously were low on the lower end because I believe Matt Miller gave it an 8.5.
Okay, I was gonna say I could see like a 10, a 9.5, 10 for that game.
Yeah, that would have. If I game. Hey, nothing wrong with Matt's review, by the way. Like,
no.
His thoughts, his opinions, and 8.5 is still a very good score. I'm saying I personally would have scored higher. That's all.
Yeah. And it feels like it's on track for that again. So I'm very much enjoying it. I think like there are the new features, like the tools that you can bring on your runs with you, like the to dig up seeds. There's like the shovel that lets you dig up things. There's the pickaxe that lets you mine ore on your runs to then come back and craft new weapons. You can
get like the tablet that lets you compel ghosts.
Yeah, compel the ghosts, or if you unlock the first familiar in the game, the frog. He will tag Phrenos. Phrenos will come along on your adventure with you, and he can compel
you kiss
them.
This frog?
Can you kiss the frog?
I saw some
you can nuzzle up to
questionable
him.
tweets about people wanting to kiss a frog yesterday on Twitter, and I assumed it was Hades.
He's adorable.
I
don't know though.
I haven't kissed him yet.
I think people want to kiss him like in a like, oh, you're my little baby.
Okay.
Not in like a hot. He's not a hot frog. He's a baby frog.
I mean, you know, I don't know. Hades Twitter is pretty thirsty. There's probably someone that wants to make out with that frog.
Okay. Well, I don't acknowledge that side. But yeah, you can get familiars in the game. I've only unlocked one. But they are, you know, little pals, little animal helpers, demons in the form of animals that come and assist you on your runs. And Phrenos will like block ranged he'll absorb every now and then a ranged hit that might have hit you. And then he can also compel up to one shade per run. And that'll send the shade back to the crossroads, which is your hub. And it will also give you that currency that lets you increase your grasp of Arcana, so you can get more Arcana cards. And then that unlocks you. Okay, I don't have to bring the book to compel the shades since Phrenos can do it. I'll bring the pickaxe or the fishing rod or the shovel. It's a lot. It's really cool. And I feel like I just continue to find more mechanics and systems that continue to be unearthed as I go. It's really,
this is going to be my struggle now, is that traditionally I don't play early access games beyond for work reasons. Like but even before this job, I wanted to wait for 1.0. I didn't play Hades 1 until it came out in 1.0, which was very hard for me as a Supergiant fan. But now that obviously because of this cover story, I've played quite a bit of Hades 2. Now it's like, do I keep going? Because I haven't hit the end. You're further than me now, Alex. I know that for sure.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I have not gotten to the end of the first run yet.
I'm worried that you will get spoiled if you don't play it yourself.
See, I'm pretty good about avoiding spoilers generally. Like for whatever reason, maybe because I'm not as online as some people maybe tend to be. But there's that part of me that's like, do I want to maybe not burn myself out, but I want to kind of retain some like freshness for the 1.0 launch, but also I want to see how it changes over time. So I've been having that conversation in my mind of like, I want to see what the end of the run looks like, but what's the lot? Do I want to see the like hard end, or do I want to just like save it for when it comes out. I don't know. I'm answering these questions.
I feel like I'm too deep that I will miss out on something now. Like when I come back, I won't necessarily remember.
Well, that's what I'm afraid of too, is like finishing it and then be like, I'm going to walk away till it comes out 1.0. But then there's like such a gap there that jumping right back in at that point feels
I feel
weird.
like finishing it though, like it's easier for my brain to remember the story beats. Whereas if I stop now where I'm at, I think I have to like commit to how far I am now. I think I just have to commit.
Right.
Because I've seen every area but one.
Okay.
And yeah,
and
I've seen both. I've seen all of the second area, the second route.
Okay.
And it's very cool. And that is that is what they need to continue to expand on.
The second route is an incomplete. Like that's one of the things they have to finish for early access.
The bottom route is like structurally complete. I'm sure they'll tune things.
Right, but it's pretty much done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like there's a final boss and everything there.
Yeah, and the reason for that, and Wes, you were talking about before how you're wondering how this game, or surprised that this game is bigger than Hades 1. It's because they put this in the early access much later in development than they did Hades 1. Mm-hmm. So they basically were like, let's just work on this for a while and then we'll put it in when it's closer to done. Because Hades 1, I think when that went in early access, it was just like two areas. It was like the entire thing at the start. So yeah, that's why it's so big, and also probably as like polished as it is now, is that they just did it much later, flipping that switch. So yeah, hopefully that signals that again this run in early access is shorter, but it depends on feedback, right? Like we'll see what fans have to say and what they feel needs to be changed or whatnot. But even with that, it sounds like the team's confident, because they were like, one of the reasons why they launched it in early access later was because they, unlike the first game, they knew the things that already worked, and thus they were like, well, we know there are like core things that we're probably not gonna have to change based on fan feedback, because they're the things that people are already happy with,
Yeah. So
it'd just be more like the new stuff and that kind of thing. So yeah, I'm interested to see how this shapes up. And man, it's weird to say when you like early access game, but it's like, this is a hell of a year for early access between this and No Rest for the Wicked. The Rogue Prince of Persia goes into early access next week, I think.
There's many others we're not mentioning.
Like Manor Lords, which is the game that's caught fire, that went in early access this year. Power World was the biggest game in the world, and that was early access. It still is.
Yeah.
The early access is just like the thing this year.
Yeah. I think that'll continue to be a thing as like the funding landscape changes.
Yes, that too. We'll get into that.
As funding drives. Yeah, we can go ahead and get into it now. We are gonna hand it over to Wes in a second, but yeah, if you've been living under a rock, funding is drying up all over the game industry. Games are getting canceled. Studios are getting shuttered. People are getting laid off. Even amidst like the indie landscape, like funding that was once, I wouldn't say abundant, but like
there was more.
There was more, and it is even drying up.
That hole was bigger.
Yeah, and it is even drying up for smaller studios and teams now.
We even saw like the Deliver Us the Moon developer, Kroken, I you pronounce them, but they laid off everyone but the founders, because they said they went to GDC this year looking for funding and weren't able to get it, and they had spent the last 2 years trying to pitch like 5 games to 40 publishers, which is a lot, and nobody bid on them. Yeah. So like the GDC was their last chance, and they weren't able to get anything, so they were like left with no choice but to lay off everyone. And now they're planning to launch a Kickstarter for their like Deliver Us Mars sequel. But like, they were one of the more prominent, but like, no, it's hard out there now, guys.
Wasn't the Deliver Us Mars, wasn't that IP? There was recent news about that IP, I thought.
I haven't heard anything about the IP, just the studio.
Okay. That was 5 days ago. Yeah.
Yeah, because I wrote that story.
Yeah. I think there's another Mars game that the IP was being handled by a new studio. There's a lot of IPs with the name Mars in them. Sorry, I'm getting distracted. But yeah, it's not good. And Xbox announced today in an email that
at least
was,
at the time we're recording.
the time of our recording, we're recording this on May 7th, 2024. In an email verified by IGN, they made the announcement that they are shuttering several studios, including two very notable ones. Arkane Austin, which is they were founded in 2006, an offshoot of Arkane Lyon, the team behind the Dishonored series. Arkane Austin in particular worked on Prey. They worked on Redfall, and Redfall. I reviewed Redfall for Game Informer, and it was definitely a misstep, but like I was still excited to see what they were gonna do.
Yeah, I mean they made Prey. 2017 Prey, to be clear.
An incredible.
And I think that game rules.
Yeah, that game is just lauded by critics far and wide. And the fact that they had one misstep and this is like their outcome is really, really frustrating as a fan of Arkane. I mean, I've said it on the show plenty of times. Arkane is my favorite developer. Collectively, Arkane Lyon and Austin, I think they're just creative geniuses, and they take shots. In the case of Redfall, it was a miss, in my opinion, but it was still like, I'm glad that game was made because it's them doing something different. And maybe it wasn't different enough because that's kind of where they fell. It kind of felt not as fresh as their other games. It kind of fell into a lot of traps in terms of, the product that they were trying to, the market they were trying to get into with that, with the multiplayer and all that
arguably
stuff.
A market that we're not even sure. I mean, hearsay, like who knows, but like I wouldn't, that market's like a live service shooter market seems like something Xbox would have wanted more than Arkane. Not to say Arkane wasn't happy doing Redfall, but
well, there were reports, I believe, out there that, developers at Arkane Austin were like wanting to work on a single player game, but that wasn't the directive.
Yeah. And then it didn't work, and then they get shut down, and it's like, yeah, I don't know. It's especially heartbreaking. Yeah,
and then Tango, creators of Hi-Fi Rush last year, we interviewed John Johannes in Japan, Blake and I. He's the game director on Hi-Fi Rush. He was really humble guy, really great guy to talk to, and I just have a really good memory of walking through Tokyo with that guy and just like getting to know him and really coming away with a sense of excitement for Tango. And just like honestly a sense of joy, like that somebody like that had a team. And Tango was also known for bringing up talent within their studio, giving new directors a chance, like John. And of course they also worked on the Evil Within series.
Yeah, this was like studio was founded by Shinji Mikami.
Yeah,
who most famously formerly of Capcom, the father of Resident Evil. As well as worked on a bunch of other big franchises for Capcom. And Tango was like his big startup after he had left Clover, which was also a big startup after he left or actually it was his lineage. He was like Capcom, then Clover, then Platinum, then Tango. And he left Tango last year, and at least at the time I don't think we knew why. I think it was just kind of, it was like a surprise because it kind of came out of nowhere like a year ago that he left. So I know a lot of people has like been, I think, kind of baselessly postulating like, oh, he saw the writing on the wall, which maybe he did. I don't know what, I don't know. If he ever commented on why he left exactly, but
I think one just like observation, of course Microsoft has acquired both of these studios now.
Right. As a part of when they bought ZeniMax.
Yeah. And I will say, like, Arkane Austin was founded in 2006. Survived a historic market crash very early on in its life cycle as a studio, when like 2008 to 2010, and they made it out without closing down their studio. And then you've got this big company with a lot of money coming in, buying them just a couple years ago, and then the second there's a hardship, just axing the whole studio.
Yeah, it's kind of where we're at now, where even like you alluded to with Arkane, where it's in the AAA space, like unless you're like a sure bet, like one misfire or even perceived misfire is like enough to sink a big studio now. Where like, and again, it doesn't even have to be like, in the case of Tango, like Hi-Fi Rush was critically acclaimed, like in a year that is maybe the best gaming year ever, and it came out early, and it managed to still make an impact by the end of the year. Because it was a surprise launch, reviewed well, and then it managed to stay in the conversation as the year went on with like Baldur's Gate 3 and Tears of the Kingdom and all these phenomenal games that came out and still win awards by the end of the year. Recently came to PlayStation for the first time. And I don't know how the game sold. My perception was probably like not amazing, because I was like, it doesn't seem like one of those games that would sell like a bajillion units. You know what I mean? Especially because it launched on Game Pass too, which maybe that's a whole other conversation too about like did that maybe not like contribute to like the downfall of the studio because of like that. I don't know how they measure Game Pass download metrics compared to like actual just like $60, $70 sales, who knows. But it's like, even if your game does like, even if everyone likes your game, it's not a guarantee for whatever reason that you'll stick around. You know, it's interesting to have like both sides of the coin of like, like Arkane Austin's last thing was not well received, and some people are like, oh, that's probably why they got closed, which it's like, that's still not a great reason, but I can see why you would say that. But then Tango releases something that everyone loves, and it's still not enough.
Yeah, it's rough. Yeah, Wes, I know you wrote up the news today. And it was IGN.
And what were the other two studios' names? I don't want to exclude them. It wasn't just these two. Yeah.
Alpha Dog Games, which they made the mobile game Mighty Doom that came out last year. They kind of are support studio / mobile studio, and then Roundhouse Games, which I've not really been able to find much on this studio, but it seems to be just an internal Bethesda support studio.
Didn't they work on Redfall?
I think so, because they kind of help out with a lot of Bethesda stuff, but there's no like. They're like they're being absorbed by the Elder Scrolls Online team, which is ZeniMax Online Studios. Yeah. Which to me kind of like alludes to where they were in Bethesda anyway. I feel like they
were co-developing. Redfall.
But yeah, so they got all four of those teams shuttered. And I'll read a little bit of the email from Xbox Game Studios head Matt Booty that IGN got a hold of. This went out to staff, and worth noting, I reached out to Xbox and Bethesda, and they just sent me the email as well and said, this is all we have to share. And it says, today I'm sharing changes we are making to our Bethesda and ZeniMax teams. These changes are grounded in prioritizing high impact titles and further investing in Bethesda's portfolio of blockbuster games and beloved worlds which we have nurtured over many decades. To double down on these franchises and invest to build new ones requires us to look across the business to identify the opportunities that are best positioned for success. This reprioritization of titles and resources means a few teams will be realigned to others and that some of our colleagues will be leaving us. And then he kind of lists the studios and what each does. And then there's like the usual apologies and all that kind of stuff. And then talking about the rest of the games coming out this year and how Xbox fans still have plenty to look forward to and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's not anything we haven't heard before. The market is tough, and Xbox has seemingly an endless amount of money, but aren't willing to use that money to keep these studios alive. They're basically saying we need to reprioritize our focus on other games and studios, presumably ones they see as better financial boons for the company. And yeah, and that's how we lose 4 studios on a random Tuesday. I think especially heartbreaking too is, and I forget who pointed this out on Twitter, but Tango Gameworks was Microsoft's only Japanese studio. Based in Japan, and this news broke this morning, and I think it was like 10:30, 11 p.m. for Japan time when this news broke. So like people like John and the rest of Tango Gameworks either went to bed with extremely depressing news or are probably waking up soon. It's 4 a.m.
Oh, John
now.
has it. I've
5
seen
a.m. there now.
John Johannes has retweeted that announcement.
Okay, yeah, so he's probably not having a great night. But like it just sucks that the studio's waking up and like jobless. Like the studio's gone. It's no more.
Yeah. His tweet says, so this is how it ends. Unfortunately, I don't have the words, but at least thank you to everyone who supported us.
It sucks. And yeah, I mean, even beyond the immediate effects, you mentioned Arkane Austin is like one half of Arkane, the other being Arkane Leon. They're working on Marvel's Blade, they help each other out. Like they're not completely independent studios. So now
Arkane Leon was seen blindsided by this too, because I saw Dinga Bakaba being like, wait, what? Like, what's happening?
Was saying he is very clearly pissed off and tweeting things that you would not think to tweet under the company that just laid off.
Like it's about your parent company.
Yeah. Like he's clearly upset, and more power to him. But yeah, like there's the immediate effects. These people are jobless and these studios are gone. And how does that affect the rest of the Xbox team? And then there's also like Arkane Leon just lost half their team, half of what makes them Arkane. And I don't think we wouldn't have games like Prey, for example. And I know they helped out with Deathloop, which is one of 2021's best games. Like Marvel's Blade, I don't know who was working on what. I know that Leon was leading the charge on that, but presumably Arkane Austin was helping, and now they just lost that help. It just sucks. This is one of those stories where it sucks now and it's going to suck years from now, and there's a lot of people who are hidden and not seen in this news that are going to be affected, that are still at Xbox.
Yeah, this is like the worst case sort of scenario with all the consolidation that's been happening over the last several years, and it's always been why I've personally been puzzled for people to kind of cheerlead that stuff about like, man, I hope Microsoft acquires this guy. It's like, I mean, it might be good for them. You kind of look at the positive of like, oh, a smaller studio will have like the financial backing of a bottomless money pit, that's cool. But just then the other side of that is like, well, if the ship starts sinking, then they have to bail water, which would be all the studios that they have.
Yeah, and you're kind of stripped of your agency as somebody who may have previously been independent. It's just like, man.
So
it's kind of like the music industry in a way. Like, obviously we're dealing with a lot more people per project and a lot more money per project, but in the same way, like, man, a lot of up and coming musicians, rappers, artists are like trying to stay independent as long as possible. And I think that's the move in games too. Like, you need to be able to like be in charge of your own destiny.
And it's like, when you think about
Stallion is still independent, and she's obviously one of the biggest artists in the world right now. She's always championing, like, stay independent if you can. There are ways to do it. Make deals if you need to, but like, keep your money.
Yeah, which is hard, because again, we talked about how hard it is to stay independent with like funding and stuff drying up. So it's like you have, that's its own unique struggle, and then the alternative is of course signing on with someone and then giving up your autonomy in that sense. It only worries me because when I think about all the other studios that Microsoft owns that are left, like, I can't imagine working at any of those right now and kind of wondering like, whoa, if this can happen to them, what about us? Especially Tango. You're like, wait, they're just coming off a well-received thing, and why did they get cut? So like,
I like Ninja Theory and Hellblade 2 this month.
Yeah,
that game I would assume does as well as Hi-Fi Rush, if not better. Like, people are really excited, and that studio makes great games, but now we don't know if is doing great enough.
That game
just don't know.
That game specifically, that game's been in development for a long time. Like, that was the first Xbox Series X game that was revealed back in 2019.
Yeah.
And so it's like, I don't know how much is riding on that game, but it feels like it might be a lot. And, who knows how much money actually went into it. But, the first game was famously kind of basically an indie game. I mean, it was. But like, I have several developers that I really like a lot are under Microsoft's umbrella, between Ninja Theory, between Double Fine, Obsidian is another one. They just bought Activision Blizzard, so that must be weird now to be like, if you're working for that company, you're like, oh wait, this can happen to us. Oh, okay. So it's like, I know it's, I try not to be so too doom and gloom, like maybe this will be the end of it, but who knows? I mean, I don't think it will not getting better. Yeah, so I was gonna say, like, signs have pointed to this not getting better anytime soon, and potentially getting worse. So again, when you keep that in mind and look at the studios that Microsoft still has left, and realize, like, at least personally, like, I like a lot of these studios that they own, a lot of them prior to being acquired by Microsoft. You're like if this happened to Double Fine, I would be heartbroken. I love Double Fine. Or Ninja Theory, I love Ninja Theory. So it's just like, And I love Tango Gameworks. Like I really like the Evil Within games. I think Evil Within 2 specifically is a vastly underrated game. I loved Hi-Fi Rush. So like that hurts a lot. I was a big fan of Prey. You know, like again, Redfall didn't do it for me, but you know, everyone misses sometimes. You know, it's not like they're bad designers or bad people either. So, you know, it was just like, hey, this was a miss. Let's see what they do next time, you know. And unfortunately, there won't be a next time. So now, I don't know. I guess I'll fire up that Prey DLC that I've never played.
I think, we also need to kind of hold Xbox execs, and this doesn't just apply to Xbox, but executives making these decisions within the games industry. Today, we're talking about Xbox, Phil Spencer, Matt Booty, Sarah Bond. Like, I think we need to hold these people to their feet to the fire a bit, and just, you know, this is not okay. It's really callous and short-sighted.
'Cause this comes also after Microsoft had a huge round of layoffs, like last year, didn't they? Like, didn't they lay off a ton of people?
Earlier this year, they had.
Or was it earlier this year?
Yeah, they did. Yeah.
Okay. See, I'm losing count now.
I mean, they did last year's. Yeah, it's.
Yeah, so it's like it's not even that far removed from that.
Yeah, I want to see, you know, pay cuts to the people that are at the top, you know, who are making the decisions. And granted, like that won't stop. That can't. I mean, if you do the math, like.
Yeah, you know, obviously we don't know what their books look like, but
it can make a difference, especially in perpetuity.
Right. I mean, do we want to bring up the oft-repeated story of Satoru Iwata taking a pay cut during the Wii U generation when Nintendo wasn't doing too great?
Yeah, I think that is a great example. You know, we pointed that one a lot, and it's sad we don't have more to point to. I would love to be able to point to other executives who are, you know.
I mean, even to go back to the Deliver Us the Moon team, the two founders of that, they were interviewed by, I believe, GameIndustry.biz, where they talked about how they had taken a salary for months prior to that because the studio just wasn't doing great. So they had not been paid for months because they were just trying to do everything they could.
It's the right thing to do, and I have an immense amount of more respect for them than I do Xbox leadership at this point in time in regards to that topic, because, you know, if that's true, then, you know, at least they tried, right?
Yeah, that one wasn't corporate meddling. That was just the overall state of like funding right now, kind of catching up with them. And
I have a lot more empathy and compassion for that compared to Microsoft, which is one of the biggest brands in the world. When aliens find the gold discs that were launched into space, right? Like they'll be reading about Microsoft, I'm sure. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like, it's a gargantuan.
They'll be installing Windows 95 on their computer.
Yeah, it's a juggernaut. And yeah, there needs to be some kind of change, and it's very frustrating to be covering more and more of these layoffs, and it's just it's not right. If you are, I will say, if you are affected by news today, the news of the closures, and you would like to talk, we can definitely keep your identity protected. Reach out to us on social media. We have I think most of us have links there to our emails, our signals, our Discords. Yeah, you can follow me at It's Van Aken. Wes is at LeBlanc Wes. Marcus is at Marcus Stewart 7. But yeah, Game Informer is our hearts are with you. It's brutal out there, and you deserve better. But moving on to what a whiplash this is. Switch 2. We've got news about Switch 2 coming. Furukawa, president of Nintendo, made a tweet earlier this morning. It reads, quote, "This is Furukawa, president of Nintendo. We will make an announcement about the successor to Nintendo Switch within this fiscal year. It will have been over 9 years since we announced the existence of Nintendo Switch back in March 2015. We will be holding a Nintendo Direct this June regarding the Nintendo Switch software lineup for the latter half of 2024, but please be aware that there will be no mention of the Nintendo Switch successor during that presentation.
Yeah, I appreciate him saying that, just putting it out there. Yeah, it's like,
yeah, and I think I've already seen people on Twitter, in social media at large, just being like, they're trying to pull one over on us. They're gonna actually announce it at the thing. Nintendo does not do that. Like,
no.
Do not expect that. You aren't getting it.
There's no surprises for the investors. Like they're talking to people with money. Like that's
they aren't. They aren't trying to like pull a gotcha on like the people who are invested in them. This isn't like just some marketing.
They're like, oh, those sneaky rascals.
Yeah.
This wasn't like news really. If you've been keeping up with Switch at all, we kind of know we're within a year of having it. It lines up with Nikkei, which is a Japanese outlet that's pretty in tune with Nintendo's going-ons. Last February, so 2 months ago, said that they expect that the Switch 2 is targeting a March 2025 launch. Which, this new tweet is saying there will be an announcement before March 2025 of next year, by March of next year. I do think this is probably something you announce later once all the summer stuff has passed, maybe in the holiday, and I would not be surprised if we are playing our Switch 2s or whatever it's called by March of next year. That makes sense. It worked really well for the Switch, the first Switch. I don't think they have the time or desire to push us to holiday, which they're not going to make it this holiday. Like we already know this is probably a 2025 console. I don't see them waiting till fall or holiday of 2025. We're already pretty dry on Switch stuff. Like I think we're kind of feeling the need for a new console. But yeah, it's nice to see them acknowledge it. It's the Switch successor. We probably know that this is like a sequel to the Switch and not just some brand new device. But yeah, pretty par for the course. If you had asked me what they're going to say in their latest financial results about the Switch successor, I would have said something similar to this.
So them saying confirming that there's a Nintendo Direct coming up. What was it? It is summer. Did they give a month, or did I might have
they said June,
that?
I believe. Yeah.
Okay. So they said that we're not talking about Switch 2, the console, in June. Does that mean that whatever is shown at that Direct will come out to Switch 1? Or do you think it'd be safe to guess, what if this game is like a Switch 2 game, but we just don't know it yet?
I mean, I think that's very possible.
That's possible. They did say the Direct is for games coming out in the latter half of this year.
So it's is this these games are the last hurrah for Switch 1 potentially?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. And I mean, we know Pokemon Legends ZA is coming to Switch next year, but we also all kind of probably secretly do know that is also probably going to hit Switch 2. I mean,
it probably should, just for the whatever power boost that system is getting.
Yeah, exactly. Or it could be a backwards compatibility thing. There's just so much up in the air about the successor that could change how we view Switch games. But we know Nintendo, we know how they operate. The Switch successor's release does not mean the Switch is dead to them. The Switch will, I don't want to say get outright support, but it will continue to sell millions for at least a couple years more. That's what happens with their consoles.
I mean, it depends on whether Switch 2 is backwards compatible.
If it's backwards compatible,
is there a reason to have to upgrade or not?
That's the dilemma with, if it is backward compatible, how do you convince the people that aren't reading about Switch 2 rumors and news that they need to upgrade? I can play these games on my Switch. Why would I upgrade? Which that's for someone way smarter who gets paid a lot more to figure out over at Nintendo. But I'm very interested to see how they message this console.
It's interesting because when you look at because they're always pretty hot and cold. Backwards compatibility, sometimes they do it, sometimes they don't. It's it almost feels willy-nilly sometimes, but at least in the last couple console gens, I feel like the console that comes after their super successful console is usually backwards compatible. Because the Wii U was compatible with the Wii, and that did super well.
The Wii could play GameCube games.
Well, the GameCube was their worst selling console up to that point. But I guess they could do it. But like the 3DS and the DS, DS did gangbusters for them. And so it's like I think they recognize sometimes like, oh, there's this install base here. Let's ease that transition for them and not completely cut them out. But at the same time, they're also not shy about saying, like, for whatever reason, this hardware is designed in such a way that we cannot support your old game. So sorry, because we have either a new hardware, like, feature or gimmick, whatever you want to call it, that just will not work with this. Like the Wii U and the Switch were two different things that are like, sorry, we're doing this other thing.
I think like when they are like vast departures from the previous product, it's much harder. I think everything we've heard about the successor to the Switch is that it will be pretty in line with like what we've come to expect.
Right, like basically just a better Switch.
Yeah, and that's
which is what we all want. Like that's I don't know if anybody wants a drastic change from Nintendo. Like, give me a stronger one. Let me play Tears of the Kingdom at 60 FPS. I'm there.
Yeah, it's like basically like you guys nailed it with the hybrid console idea, clearly, because other people have started doing it.
Yeah.
So like, and I'm not tired of that. Like, I don't know if I'll ever get tired of the idea of like, I can play this at home or on the go. That's great,
Yeah.
With the same
I've talked
device.
with friends before how like, so the PlayStation and the Xbox, they don't really do what Nintendo does. Like, it's just a more powerful version that looks a little different of their last console. But Nintendo is always like doing big changes and there's like gimmicky things. I kind of want them to just settle into the Switch being the Nintendo console, and then I'll take a Switch 1, 2, 3, 4. Like, just keep giving me the Switch, make it more powerful, somehow make it lighter with each iteration. Yeah. I don't need like a big change. Like, they really did nail it with this one, I think.
Yeah, it almost feels like un-Nintendo-like for them to do that, but then also like, I feel like they would only do it if they found a better way to do that console. Because I would have said the same thing about the DS, like getting away from that. Because to me, it's like, oh, that's a brilliant idea for a handheld. Like, as silly as it seemed at first, like 2 screens, what? And then you use it, and you're like, oh no, this is great. And you can fold it. It's just perfect for portability. Like, this is the best portable device I've ever used. And then when the Switch came out, and you're like, this is a better portable device. They phased out the 3DS because they're like, we don't need a handheld market. It can just all be in one. So like, until they find the next evolution of that, of like, how do we? Because I feel like Nintendo will always be in the handheld game in some form going forward forever, because it's just done so well for them going all the way back to the Game Boy.
Yeah.
So it's like, until we find a somehow better way to do the Switch, then it should probably just be hybrid console.
You can't change the Switch. You can't, like, now that Sabrina Carpenter has sung about the Switch in Mi Espresso.
And that's the baseline. Like, when that happens, you can't.
It's the #1 charting song. It's in the chorus, the Switch. You gotta keep the name, man. Switch 2.
Is she actually referring to the Nintendo Switch and not just
Switch? She says switch it up like Nintendo.
Okay, I haven't heard the song, so okay.
Oh, okay.
There we go.
It's good. Once you listen, there's no going back. It will be in your head forever.
Yeah.
There was a wrestler named Carmelo Hayes who recently cut a promo on a guy and said that these fans are going to switch on you like Nintendo. So I use the Carmelo Hayes metric. I'm like, well, now Carmelo Hayes is saying it, so now they got to keep it.
It's true.
All right, and that was the Switch 2 news. Before we jump into Little Kitty Big City and Crow Country, we're going to go and have a chat with Charlie Wacholz, freelancer, journalist. He's a great guy, great writer, great journalist. And he reviewed Animal Well for us, so we're going to go and talk to him right now. Welcome back to the Game Informer Show. We are joined by Charlie Wacholz. You might know him from all over the internet as a freelance journalist. He is a friend of the show. As they say, Charlie also just reviewed Animal Well on behalf of Game Informer. You can read about it, I believe, in the next magazine issue. And of course, online, all that fun stuff. But the game is coming out very soon. Charlie, when is this game out?
I believe May 10th.
May 10th. All right.
Or May 9th.
Pop quiz. Good job. May 9th, I think you're right.
Yes. Which is funny because the Donkey
huge.
just uploaded a video where they said Animal Well May 9th like 8 million times, and I watched it yesterday. So I should have been more ready with the quick drop for that one.
It's funny. I'm excited to hear about this because I remember seeing this game at Summer Games Fest, like Play Days 2 years ago, and staring at it for like 5 minutes and simultaneously thinking, this looks cool. And also, I don't know if I totally understand what I'm seeing.
Yeah. Well, before we get into it, I would love to introduce you to our guest, Charlie. What can you tell people about what you do, where they might have seen your work, and if they aren't familiar with your work, where they can find your work?
Certainly, yeah. I am a freelancer, as Alex said. You can find my work just about everywhere on the internet that covers video games. I've written for CNN, IGN, NPR, Nintendo Life, Android Central, Game Informer. Like I've written for a lot of different publications. I think most famously or infamously, I'm the guy who gave Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl 2 a 9 for IGN. I think that was something that whipped up a bit of a frenzy, and that I've been branded as since then. But yeah, I'm a freelance journalist. You can find my work just about everywhere.
Awesome.
I also have a podcast that's kind of anticipating the end of the Switch era. As you guys have earlier discussed in this episode, there is going to be a Switch successor announced sometime this year, which we're kind of anticipating and talking about the nostalgia, myself and my co-host Tucker and a ton of different guests. But yeah, we're kind of.
And what's the name of that podcast?
It is called the Nintendo Switch Select Podcast. It is
cool.
Very much like hinged around our shared nostalgia as people who are like from very firmly in Gen Z. Like we were both in high school when the Switch came out, and now we're out of college, working adults basically, or
writing for CNN.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, we're kind of just like, it's about the Switch as much as it is growing up.
That's really cool. Yeah, the Switch came out before I was a part of the game industry in a professional sense, in like a full-time professional sense. And I remember sitting at my day job playing Zelda. I had like a cubicle that had walls around it, so you couldn't see stuff. So I'd just be sitting there playing Switch, and then I'd hear somebody coming, and I'd like put it down and get back to work. It was a good time.
I could hear you sliding the Joy-Cons and that snap, and they're like, "What? Someone's playing a Switch?"
Yeah. At one point in time, I got a little too overzealous and like had my legs up on my desk.
Oh wow, you were just relaxing. Okay.
Yeah. I think it was on like a snow day or something where not many people were there. Yeah, because it was in March.
Charlie, I have to ask, by the way, before we get into Animal Well, like Nickelodeon All Stars, you gave it a 9.
Yeah.
Did you review the sequel, and if so, what did you give it?
So Nickelodeon All Star Brawl 2 is the game that I gave a 9. I actually think the original is not very good. But gotcha. I've been a competitive Smash player for almost 10 years now. I'm very, very into platform fighters and stuff like that. So I'm a huge fan of that game and the additions and changes it's made to the genre. Like genuinely, I think it is one of the best games in the genre.
Wow. Okay. I have not played the sequel yet. Okay.
It's really fun. The slime mechanic basically just adds Roman canceling from Guilty Gear into it. It's very
Oh, wow. That's really cool. Okay. Hell yeah. I love Guilty Gear Strive. Well, Charlie, let's get into the reason you're here today, at least. Animal Well. This is the first published game by Bigmode, which of course notably is run by the Donkey family. I'm not sure their real names. I apologize.
I think that's a mob.
Okay, the Donkey family. The mob. Yeah, that's the Spider-Man 2, like one of the villains. So we're gonna scoot past that bad joke. But yeah, Donkey and crew are publishing this under Bigmode. I know Bigmode got a lot of talk when it was first announced, and they've kind of been championing Animal Well from the start. And there's always a little bit of skepticism. Donkey notable for being very funny. I think he's a hilarious guy. A lot of his videos I really like. I think sometimes he can be known for punching at developers. And so I think like there was a lot of skepticism about Bigmode in the space. And on my end of things, I think it's turned out great. I have not played nearly as much as you have. But what are your thoughts on Animal Well? How did it turn out? Like the first foray into games for Bigmode?
I think it's spectacular. I mean, as a fan of a lot of Metroidvanias, and especially this kind of very surrealist, weird take on the genre, I think is a spectacular, like just an amazing first outing. I think while I'm not always on the same page with Donkey, I think one of the things he's pretty solid at is curation, right? And so curating this kind of a game that has some distinct qualities to it that is fun and environmentally absorbing and weird but funny and a little scary at times. And I think Shared Memory did a spectacular job with just setting themselves up for success, really. I've talked to Billy Basso, who's the director, a handful of times at PAX and things like that. He's also here in Chicago as well, so we've got a lot to talk about. But you can just tell through even the smallest, most intricate detail that there is a sense of vision and direction at play here that isn't always there, I think, in a lot of games like this that are very much the indie pixel-based Metroidvania. I think this has so much creative spark and energy to it that feels really expressive.
Yeah, I think I was kind of blown away just from the start. I very much, this has been on my radar, but I have really been trying to, because I know a lot of it is about exploring, finding secrets, solving environmental puzzles. It's one of those games I didn't necessarily want to know a lot about. I saw the aesthetic, I saw like the mission statement of the game, right? Like just exploring this underground well that's full of animals. There's conflict in the game, but not necessarily combat. And all of those things were very interesting. And booting it up, I was really surprised at almost immediately just the depth that we're dealing with here. And around almost every other screen is some wildly cool puzzle. That, I mean, the amount of, I'd love to see the spreadsheet, the design doc of this game, because the amount of mechanics and like puzzle mechanics that are in this game, and I'm only an hour and a half in, it's ridiculous.
And it really doesn't stop unfolding itself.
Really? Okay.
Until the end. I mean, I think that there are moments where, and I touch on this in the review a little bit, but there are moments where there are difficulty spikes here and there. And I think that is the only time where the kind of unfolding of mechanics really stops. But even at that point, I think those are engaging in themselves, because you are like trying to make a mad dash from one end of the map to the other without giving away too much. I don't know how to paint it without spoiling the entire thing, but you are, it puts your platforming challenge to the test while also making sure that you know the map really well. And I think that is a very like different approach to compared to the rest of the game, where it is very puzzle focused. It is very much like if you mess up, it's very easy to go back and try again.
In that way, it reminds me of the playfulness of Spelunky.
Yeah.
And granted, not nearly as frustrating when you die, because there are a lot of checkpoints, and there's a save system and then there's a checkpoint system, and those kind of work differently. Like if you jump into like water, you'll just teleport back where you had previously jumped from. If you die, like you lose all of your health, then you're taken back to your last save point. I believe that's how it works.
Yes.
And it's funny that you say like difficulty spikes, Charlie, because I wouldn't say that this game is easy by any means. Like I think it's like from the get-go pretty obtuse in some pretty big ways, and they kind of like it seems like they want you to fail to learn. And so it's interesting that you're saying there's even more difficulty spikes, just because I don't necessarily think it's easy going as it is.
When you say obtuse, is it like, so when I hear that word, I think of either like Souls games of like it, but it's usually more for like a narrative standpoint, but it sounds like this is more mechanical, and then it draws my mind to something like Tunic, of like, oh, you have things that you can do, we're just not going to tell you that you can do them, and you just kind of have to figure that out by looking around. Is it that kind of I guess level of like discovery? Yeah.
It's definitely more along the lines of a Tunic in that way, where you're given, let's say, a frisbee, and at first you think, oh, all I can do with this is throw it in a direction. Then you find out that it can bounce off walls. then you find out you can jump on top of it and ride it. And
yeah, I had that moment last night, and I was like, oh my god,
right.
So it's like a lot of aha moments.
Yeah.
Yes,
it's very reminiscent of kind of the way like games from the Super Nintendo or NES era tutorialize themselves, where it's not as much, they don't really have the capacity to show you how to play the game. Instead, they put puzzles in front of you that encourage you to learn how to play the game through trial and error.
Yeah. And there are a lot of items that you pick up. Like that Frisbee is only one item of like, I think I have like 4 now, maybe 5, and I'm only, 2 hours in. And it's just like that one Frisbee is a great example of like the progression of knowledge that you obtain by just by just playing. Of course, you have to be perceptive. You have to be curious and be willing to be playful to discover those things. But they can really help you out. And in some scenarios, they are like mandatory that you use them to solve the puzzles. In other ways, I found that it just like makes things easier. And sometimes it feels like I'm bypassing a puzzle because I have like this secret piece of knowledge that I have uncovered. Whereas, there's a different way you could probably do it as well.
Yeah,
it's really cool.
Yeah, there are so many moments like that where it feels like you're kind of almost like lifting back, peeling back the wallpaper and looking at what's behind it of this game in really satisfying ways, and in ways that you feel both encouraged to do, but it also feels like, oh, I'm like finding the secret. This isn't supposed to be what I'm doing, or I'm not necessarily supposed to be doing this thing, but it's very clearly encouraged, but in a way that makes you feel smart and is like in itself very satisfying.
Yeah. There's also just like it's a really neat art style that they've got going on. I'm not quite sure like what animal you play as. I don't know if it's ever revealed. You kind of look like a potato.
I was gonna ask you, are you like a blob?
Yeah, you're kind of just like a little goob.
Yeah, like a dust bunny or a potato,
a slime, if you will.
Yeah, and all I know is a lot of animals like to try to eat you. That's why I'm thinking like some kind of food. Right?
It probably looks like a marshmallow. They're like, oh, I want to eat that.
Yeah. There's also like a lot of terror in this game. Is like it's beautiful, and there are times when it feels like graceful and like just like idyllic, and then very quickly it unravels into terror and just caution, and it's a very weird place.
So it's the movie Annihilation.
Yeah no, honestly, like, yeah, it's the Annihilation.
That's what that description it was like. Yeah, that just sounds like Annihilation.
Yeah that's actually like, I mean, obviously not 1-to-1, but a lot of similar roller coaster of feelings. It's like, this is terrifying, but it's beautiful.
It feels very like alive and natural in a way that isn't just one thing, where I think a lot of games that focus on strong environmental design are trying to convey one specific thing at any given time. And I think Animal Well like is very adept at kind of being able to fit multiple different emotional states into one shot, one scene, one room. And you have this kind of like droning Twin Peaks like soundtrack to it, and then layered on top of this like really adorable like animal that you're sitting next to, that's just like, maybe it's a duck and it's just like quacking a bunch and like looking around, and it's a cute pixel art duck, but it's backed by this kind of dread-inducing like hum. But then there's so much color, and there's so much again, very intricate backgrounds and very well constructed, almost like sculpture like structures that are scattered throughout this world too, and it's somehow all very cohesive still.
Yeah, one of my favorite moments, I'm not going to spoil what happens in it, I'm just going to say 2 words, and that is wiener dog. So listeners, look, I want somebody to tweet me when they experience wiener dog.
I almost bought a wiener dog when I just graduated high school. A friend of mine, we seriously thought about sharing it. We were going to name it Nathan because that's how clever we are.
Oh yeah.
And then we backed out. So we did not get to experience wiener dog the way that you got to.
I grew up around a wiener dog. His name was Tucker.
Okay.
He could only walk with 2 legs, so he had a scooter on his back.
Oh,
That's and he
amazing.
scooted around
That's
all
awesome.
day. Yeah, he's cute.
This wiener
Shout out
dog.
to Tucker.
This wiener dog.
Not as much.
Yeah, not as much. It will call. You will look at wiener dogs differently after this interaction. For sure.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
I had a wiener dog growing up, and its name was Gabby, which is also the name of my now wife,
Your
then
wife,
girlfriend.
yeah.
And so anytime she was over, my mom or dad would be like yelling at Gabby the
Yelling
dog,
at
or saying
Gabby.
like, "Gabby, go outside," or "Oh, Gabby, you pissed on the couch," like something
Everywhere, Gabby.
Yeah. And it was always like a fun joke for a long part of our relationship.
You know, I feel like you rarely see wiener dogs in the wild. I know we're on a tangent right now, but it's weird that most of us already had like a wiener dog story. Like, it's weird to have this. You don't see this concentration of wiener dog owners together very often.
I feel like lately
Yeah,
I've been seeing
I think
a lot
Florida
of-
people though have a lot of wiener dogs typically.
I-
Y'all are
I-
a wiener dog state.
The
The people that I knew had a wiener dog. The people I knew who had a wiener dog who grew up moved to Florida.
Yeah,
Really?
people say that about us. Yeah, we are a
Where's-
very wiener dog state.
Wiener dogs and alligators, what we got down here.
We need
Yeah.
a ranking of the top 10 most wiener dog inclined states.
Hmm.
I'm thinking
I probably
I think
have a press release
Ohio-
in my spam folder that tells me.
Probably Georgia.
yeah, I can see Georgia. I think
Florida.
Illinois. Like I see a lot of wiener dogs out here in Chicago. Honestly,
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I would say if they're in Florida, it's probably because they're an invasive species.
Yeah, it has to be flat
maybe
surfaces.
one of the Dakotas. One of the Dakotas.
That checks out.
Which one? You got to commit
I
to
think.
yeah. South for
I
sure.
think. Oh, you said South. Okay.
Yeah.
one. Yeah, without
Yeah,
hesitation either.
that's-
You just knew.
No.
which other states have like
I-
hot
I-
dog styles? Seattle,
Hot
Washington
dog styles?
probably has
Santa Fe?
Yeah,
Yeah, does the
dog.
Chicago weenie dog just have a bunch of vegetables on its back and green stuff? And
Relish.
pickled things.
we'll call it relish.
That green stuff. Pickles.
Yeah,
Looks radioactive.
there are like 8 different kinds
Yeah.
of pickled things on a Chicago dog. It's nuts.
Pickled peppers.
Yup.
I love a Chicago dog.
Celery seed.
Yep. Yeah. Love hot dogs.
Yeah.
Anyways, Animal Well.
Animal Well.
What a weird sentence to end now. I love hot dogs.
I don't think there are any hot dogs in Animal Well. unfortunately.
Charlie, anything else that we should cover about Animal Well? Do you guys have any questions for Charlie? Or I guess you could ask me, but I don't.
I mean, I guess in general, from like a mechanic standpoint, the platforming feel good? Because that's usually like a make or break for me because I love platformers. Like, how does it feel? What does it feel comparable to?
It's the platforming. I don't know if I have a direct comparison in mind. The platforming does feel very good. It's definitely tougher than I would say most Metroidvanias, but once you get comfortable with the mechanics, especially the coyote time, I think the coyote time in this game is like very heavily utilized in a way that I feel like isn't in a lot of other Metroidvanias where, you know,
And coyote time is when you are running across a platform, you have a little bit of grace period after you run off the edge before you fall. Is that what that's
Yes.
right? Correct?
Yeah.
Is that what it's called in
And-
game, or is that like a term?
No, that's a term.
That's a
That's a
term.
game
Oh,
design term.
that's sick. I'm gonna start using
It's-
that. I was
it's one
like
of my
coyote
favorite,
time.
like-
What the?
It's like bullet time. Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. I like that.
But yeah, the coyote time I would say is a little bit longer, and it definitely takes advantage of that. So the platforming does feel very challenging at first as you're kind of finding your sea legs with Animal Well, but then as you get more comfortable, things will feel a little bit more feasible and a little bit easier. I would say the biggest point of contention with the platforming does fall in the same area as the difficulty spike. I'm not even actually sure if I completed that section the way that you're supposed to, but the way that I did it was fairly challenging. And it definitely put my platforming abilities to the test.
Was it the bubble area?
No, it's
Something
lighting
else.
the dog flame. Or the
No, I
wolf
don't know what that
flame.
is.
Wiener
okay.
dog?
Wait,
no
is
idea
this
what
the
that
wiener
means.
dog too?
No,
This
I don't
is-
know what
this
that
is
means.
in the same realm as the wiener dog, but this is not the wiener
Okay.
dog. This is like a ghost dog.
God, I'm excited.
You might have
There's
seen him in
some-
the
Wiener dogs?
trailers.
Dang.
Yeah, a lot of
Yeah.
dogs in this.
There's a lot of hey, it's a well of animals. You know, you got lots of dogs, lots of birds.
Yeah.
A couple.
Are they
cats.
all? Maybe this is. Are they all dead? Like animals shouldn't be in wells.
Don't answer that. I don't want to know that. But looking at it, I genuinely don't know the answer. But yeah, looking at it, it does seem like it's like a bunch of spirits or something.
Just their design. I've seen like screenshots and everything.
It's
like
ethereal.
Quality.
I know my dogs would not last long in a well. Like maybe 2 days.
I don't think most
your dogs
would.
will go to heaven. These are the bad dogs.
True. Well,
wait, I thought
think.
What? There's bad dogs?
I don't know if they're bad.
Well, I guess in the movie there's
morally,
like this,
but they are opposed to you.
That's true. Well, I guess you're not a person.
So the worldview of the dust ball potato, they are bad.
They treat you like a chew toy.
That there's a scene where he says, "From my point of view, the dogs are evil."
Yeah. So I don't know if they're dead or alive. I don't know.
You got to beat the game.
I don't know if it really, from what I've seen at least, I don't know if it necessarily like says either way. I think it's very like you guys said, it's
ambiguous.
Very ethereal, and I think it's like, yeah, some part of me does think that this game might be tied to some kind of exploration of grief relating to a pet that might have passed away, but I honestly have no idea and very few context clues to point me to that conclusion. So it's very much just a theory, not like anything is gospel, really. I don't think there's any text in the game aside from descriptors for what you're picking up or when you're saving the game.
Well, the game's called Animal Well, and if you reinterpret it, it means that they're fine. So
everybody's fine.
Yeah, animals are well is what it actually means.
It took a lot of restraint not to make the strapline of my review well done.
Yeah. Speaking of your review, what did you give Animal Well for score?
I gave it a 9 out of 10.
Nice.
I
agree. I would have been upset if you didn't lower.
He would have come at you.
Yeah, I would have incited a lot of harassment your way over the number. That would have really ruined my week. But I am happy that you did 9. I could definitely see that.
Yeah, I'm really, really happy with how this game turned out. I've played it in like various demo situations over the last like 2 years at this point, and finally having the opportunity to go beyond the first like 10-15 minutes of the game was so exciting. And it's a game that I felt like really pays off in spades when I gave it my full undivided attention, where secrets and subtleties and animations and every possible presentational thing, but then layered into or folded into some kind of mechanical revelation, always popped up when I was really fully locked into this game. And I really appreciate that. I feel like that's something that is always going to pay off when a game is able to fully accomplish that.
Yeah.
Nice.
I will just say like one piece of advice to anybody playing this game. If you get stuck, look for invisible walls. There are so many invisible walls in this game, like secret areas, right? Like try to go against the walls if you're stuck. That's typically helped me out a lot. It's definitely one of those games. There's secrets within secrets in almost every room.
Everywhere.
Yeah, everywhere. So very cool. Well, Charlie, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it. If people want to follow you, I know they can follow you on social media at CHAS_MKE, Chaz_Mike without the I.
Milwaukee.
Milwaukee. Oh, okay. Yeah. That makes a lot more sense. Yeah.
People always think it's like Chaz Mike or Chaos Mike. No, it's abbreviation of Charles, which is my government name, and then MKE, which is where I'm from.
Cool. Well, thanks, man. We really appreciate you coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for reviewing the game for Game Informer.
Yeah.
I can't wait to read the review in full.
I am so excited. This is my first print byline, so I'm very excited to hold the magazine.
To get it in the mail. Yeah.
I'm so stoked.
Congrats.
Thank you.
Subscribe.gameinformer.com if you also would like to get it in the mail.
Hell yeah.
Well, thanks, Charlie. We will talk to you soon. We'll see you at SGF, I bet. Maybe we'll see you on a video or something there. But thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Have a good one, y'all.
Well, I know we got a little bit of time left in the show. I want to go to US. You've been playing Little Kitty Big City.
Yeah.
This is one of the May 9th indie games that are dropping.
A big day for May 9th.
Yeah.
The indies.
Something happened. Yeah, Little Kitty Big City is a If you haven't seen it, it's just like it's aiming for like the cute, cozy audience. You are a cat who is just out there being a cat in a big city. I've played it, and now I know what that means, which is a cat has fallen from their favorite nesting spot. They'll placed a nap up in their apartment window down to the city below, and they just want to get back because they have a nap to catch. The city, it turns out, is basically Tokyo, like a small, like suburban area of Tokyo, which is really cool. And you are just doing cat things. Like you can swipe with the triggers, you can do a big stretch emote, and it's even called big stretch. It's not just a big stretch, it's like big stretch. And you're kind of just going around and talking to other animals as you adventure your way through the city to eventually get back home. The main premise is that you don't have enough energy to climb up high enough to get back to your home. So you have to collect fish around the city to give you more energy, which translates to little paws you have on screen. And that's like a Zelda Tears of the Kingdom like climbing mechanic. The paws drain as you climb. And yeah, to get the fish, you have to do little quests around the town. It took me like 3 to 4 hours to beat this game. It's very short and cute and warm. You talk to a crow who wants you to get him shiny things because crows like shiny things. And after you get enough, he gives you a fish. You might talk to a fisherman and do some stuff with them to get a fish. It's all simple. They are all admittedly kind of like fetch quests, which I typically don't care for in games, but they take like 10 minutes. And it's cute. You get to be a cat. You get to climb up stuff and knock over pots and pounce on birds to get feathers. It's just like a really, like, they could have easily made this a cute cat game, but it's actually like a cute cat game that feels good to play, has fun little puzzles, environmental puzzles to solve, and a great sense of like place and personality. I really, really like this city that you're in, which is not Tokyo. I like the characters a lot. There's a lot of cat puns. And you really do like, they did a good job of making you feel like you're a cat. Like you have all the things you would want to have access to as a cat. And like the result is kind of just like a good reminder of why we all love cats so much. Like I was constantly doing things on screen and being like, oh my gosh, that's so cute. I love this. The same way that I do when I just watch my cat in the window do silly things. And I'm like, oh my God, I love her so much. This is the best. And I think it's just, it's a must play if you like cats. If you have a cat, absolute must play. I gave it an 8 out of 10, which is a great score. It's not like run home and play this immediately. But if you're looking for something fun on an afternoon to play and you really like cats or Tokyo, like give it a go. It's fun. It's easy breezy. It's very cute. Yeah,
I think it's only $8.99.
Oh, really? Yeah. Okay, perfect. Yeah. That checks out. Yeah.
At least on Steam. I think on Switch, it's got the Switch tax.
Yeah.
I mean, there's not. It's like 22 on Switch.
Even that's still definitely fair. There's not too much with this game. If you think of a game where you play as a cat, it's this. There are cute puzzles, fun characters. It's a good time. Just don't go in expecting anything like over the top. It's a great afternoon game about a cat who wants to get back to their napping spot, which was plenty enough for me.
Yeah, it's also launching on Game Pass.
Oh, cool.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. Definitely check it out. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I liked it too. I finished it too. Pretty much echo everything.
Oh, you know what? I think I'm looking at the soundtrack is $8.99. I apologize. Yeah, I think it's 22 for the actual game.
But yeah, I enjoyed the game too. It's interesting. It's hard not to compare this game to Stray in some respects, even though they're doing two pretty different things. I think I actually
prefer this to Stray, in the sense that, I mean, Stray's prettier and I like the setting more because it's like cyberpunk. I do think that this game does a better job of letting you be a cat and doing cat things. It just really leans into the cute and humor of owning a cat.
Right. It gamifies the cat thing. It works Stray did too, but like it Little Kitty Big City does it in like a broader scope.
Yeah.
And I will say the one hang up I have with this game is that I wish the platforming was better. Like I think it's a little too finicky and imprecise at points, especially in climbing. It's kind of a chore.
That's one of my biggest gripes is the climb back to your napping spot is not great because the climbing kind of sucks. And there's other reasons I enjoyed that climb, but the actual mechanical movement, it's like, this is how the game ends. It's a big climb. And this is
it kind of highlights the how not stellar the platforming is. There were times where I fell off that climb really high up because like even the jumping is weird because it's a little too deliberate and a little too over animated, where it's like I just need you to make this precise jump, and then I get to the edge and then it auto jumps and I'm like no, I wasn't ready, and now I fell all the way to the ground. Or like I would do a running jump but there's like a weird delay where it didn't jump when I needed it to, or I felt like it should have, and then I'm just falling off a thing. And it's just like I feel like I think they were leaning into the like animations of being a cat maybe a little too hard, and it's like I wish this maybe felt a little bit more video gamey in that sense. And I felt like Stray's platforming felt a lot smoother and tighter, but there's also like less of it than in this game too. So it's not a 1-to-1, but other than that, like it's a fun chill little thing. And I also like that the other stuff is optional. Like you can honestly, I would almost recommend you just beeline it to the end because you can still do everything afterwards, but then you get the bonus of like being able to see things on the map. So this part of me is like, honestly, just finish the game and then go back and clean everything up.
I played on Xbox. I wish it was on PlayStation because I would go get the platinum because it's a good cleanup list of things to do. But to your credit, you do get a map full of things to do after beating the game. So cool. Maybe beeline it.
Awesome. Little kitty, big city. Marcus, I want to throw it to you before we round the show out to talk about Crow Country real quick.
Yeah, speaking of crows.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Shiny things.
Tell me about it. Yeah,
this game's not very shiny, funny enough. It's also, it's intentionally a little like grainy and muddy because this game is evoking the early, like late 90s survival horror games like Resident Evil and Silent Hill. Like think of the first couple of entries of those, and that's pretty much what this game is going for. So this is developed by SFB Games, who is probably best known as the developer of Snipper Clips, which a Switch launch title. They also developed Tangle Tower, which is a puzzle kind of adventure game that I really love, and they're making a sequel to it later this year called The Mermaid's Tongue that I'm excited for. But they've been around for a minute. They actually go all the way back to making Flash games.
This game looks really cool.
Yeah, it's funny because it came on my radar relatively late, like not too long before the demo dropped, and I was like, wait, why haven't I seen this? Because like I like this studio a lot and I like survival horror, and this is like a old school survival horror thing. I gotta check this out. There's a Steam demo out now if you want to try it. But yeah, the game, it's set in a abandoned theme park called Crow Country, like a crow themed amusement park, and you play as this agent, a young agent named Mara Forrest, who's trying to find the owner of the park, Edward Crow, who has gone missing at sort of the request of his daughter. And when you arrive there, you quickly find out that it has been taken over by these weird, really gross looking monsters that have just roaming all over the place. And you're just trying to survive and find this guy, and you're unraveling this sort of broader mystery about like, where did these things come from? What happened to everybody? What is happening here?
Yeah.
So the game, if you're a survival horror fan, especially of that early, like late 90s, early 2000s era, this game has a lot of the familiar tropes of like, it's got they're not pre-rendered backgrounds, but they look like they are. Like I think the art style like nails the era just like in a good way, where like it just looks like a long lost PS1 game. I really like the character models because they kind of look like dolls to me. And I think it gives the game kind of its own unique charm outside of just looking like a Resident Evil clone, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
But it also has like some modern tweaks. Like they were very smart about like what to keep and not be too slavish to like the trippy, because you can rotate the camera freely 360 degrees. It's not like a static camera angle like those games were. You have free movement instead of tank controls. You can aim even early on, like almost immediately your gun, you can find a laser sight, which is more of a Resident Evil 4 thing.
That's cool.
So it just makes combat better, and you can find different laser sights for other weapons that you have. And yeah, but outside of that, it's I have my review up on the site. I gave it an 8 out of 10 because I really enjoyed the game. And what I like about it is that outside of those little like modern tweaks, it's not really trying to do anything more than what it is. Like it's not trying to redefine or reinvent survival horror. It's kind of like, if you want that, wait for the next Resident Evil probably.
Yeah.
But if you want more of a nostalgic throwback, kind of in the vein of like I was a big fan of Signalis a couple years ago, which was going for a similar that was a similar kind of thing of like, hey, remember how these games used to be? Let's just make one of those. This is one of those. I will say it's less it's not nearly as difficult as Signalis or those old games. Like, it feels like a good entry point if you've ever been curious about what survival horror used to look like. Because, you know, there is inventory management, there is like elaborate puzzle solving that you're doing. There's no auto saves. Like, I would say the element that this game is like most hardcore is exploration, because you know, there's no auto saves. You can only save in between rooms, which means if you die, whatever, you lose all your progress before the last time you saved or after the last time you saved. So you have to be very diligent about like going back to save rooms, and you only have 3 save slots. Searching environments involves around a lot of bumping into things and hugging things, because the little interactables can be very easy to miss in the rooms just because of how intentionally cluttered the level design is. And the game even tells you like, hey, make sure you really search around, because it's you can miss some stuff. And you know, whether it be like med kits or like clues to solving a puzzle. So like that stuff might be for people that got into survival horror with the modern Resident Evil remakes, which are of a similar style, of course, but they did some like smart quality of life stuff to those games. This game doesn't have that. So I think if you're weaned on that stuff, then maybe this might feel a little harsh, you know, and this would be speaking to probably primarily younger players, honestly.
Yeah.
But for someone like me that I guess that grew up in this time, it was more like, oh yeah, I know what this is. I can tolerate this. And also the game, like, combat's pretty easy. Like, I think like inventory conservation is easy if you're not trying to shoot everything. Like, even just like evading the enemies, even though they start throwing more at you as the game progresses, like there's more of them roaming outside as you're trying to move from sections of the park. You know, you're having to do a little bit more of an obstacle course, but even then it never really got out of hand to me. So for me as a veteran, it was like, oh yeah, I was usually, and the game's also very generous about always giving you ammo for the most part. So for me, there was never a time where I was like, oh, I don't have anything, you know, like I have no resources, I have no bullets. Like I was always pretty strapped. But I also play these games pretty conservatively because I've played enough of them. But because of that, it feels like a good comfort food kind of like survival horror game of like, you know what, I just have an itch for something like this right now. And it's a short game. It's probably like 5 to 6 hours. I probably did, and I was pretty thorough in it. You know, it's not like the park itself is pretty small. It's just more condensed, you know? But in terms of like how many sections of the park, there aren't many. You're just going to be running around back and forth between it. But I think the puzzles are well done. I think the story is interesting enough and has a pretty cool twist at the end that I wasn't expecting. And it just felt like I think I put in my review, like, it just kind of feels like wearing a warm blanket of like, I know what this is, and I really like these kind of things. And that's kind of all I need right now. It's just like a really good one of these. Yeah. And I think that's what Crow Country is. So awesome. Yeah, it's out May 9th. And yeah, like I said, survival horror fans, I think it's worth giving it a look.
Awesome. Well, thank you for keeping us up to date on that. For all of this, go to GameInformer.com. Check out our reviews, our features, our podcast videos. If you would like, you should support us. It really does help us out if you get a print magazine subscription. The $19.91 promo is still happening. $19.91, 10 issues a year. If you sign up now, you will get the Hades 2 issue as your first magazine in your mailbox. And it's
beautiful art on that issue.
Yeah, 85 plus pages of game reviews, features, industry profiles, cover stories, interviews. I mean, it's a really interesting book. Beautiful art with minimal text on it, so you can kind of display it, and you won't have a bunch of ads on the cover of our magazine. So if you want to do that and help keep the lights on, that really helps us.
Sorry. What? It reminded me of like, what if we had the Hades 2 cover, but it was in the like old style of GI where
on
the cover, like, you know, 5-page preview for Digital Eclipse, and we have like, all over Malinois's face.
Yeah. No, it's just the Game Informer logo, and the rest is the art, which was drawn by Gen Z, the art director over at Hades, at Supergiant rather. So go, please grab one of those. You can also, if you already have one and you want to support us even more, you can gift them. We have a gifting program set up really easy. Again, subscribe.gameinformer.com to do that. That really does help us and helps keep the lights on, helps show our parent company we are worth keeping around, if I'm being honest. Yeah, we really appreciate it. Thank you for listening to the show this week. We'll see you next Thursday. Until then, be well. Bye, everybody.
Bye.